Well, good morning, everyone. How you guys doing this morning? That's about how the first service was doing this morning. Are you guys tired this morning? Anybody tired here? Raise your hand. You don't have to be ashamed if you're tired. Thought it's kind of interesting. Eric's tired. Kirk's tired. So this morning, you guys, I just want to share with you before we get started in worship. I came in just a little bit early this morning. I asked Wyatt to put a verse on the screen for me, and this was the verse that I felt the Lord gave to me, and I wanted to share it with you. And I want to concentrate on the first three words of the verse, and it says, sing for joy. That right there in that verse, it says for us to sing for joy. And I don't know if you have any joy absence, maybe in your homes, or in your businesses, in your workplaces, in families. But you guys know what? We're supposed to sing for joy. But who are we supposed to sing for joy to? God, our strength. Amen. Yeah, so sing for joy to the Lord. Sing for joy to God, our strength. So that's why we're here this morning. Maybe you guys need joy this morning. Maybe you've had a hard week. Anybody just had a hard week? 1, 2. Oh, good. You guys had some. I just really had an emotionally strugglesome week this week. And you know what? It's okay because we're to sing for joy to the Lord, our strength. So we're going to pray, and I have one more verse for you before we do it. It says Psalm 47:1, clap your hands, all you nations. Shout to God with cries of joy. So this morning we're going to do a new song, and I know you guys might not know the lyrics right away, but I'm going to encourage you to clap. And if you are off tempo, watch Denny, because he's not going to be off tempo. So watch Denny, okay? All right, let's pray, you guys. God, I thank you this morning. You are good, and you are mighty, and we just give you glory, honor, and thanksgiving. God, we just want to give you praise, and we want to sing for joy, and that you would restore joy in this place, that you would restore joy in our hearts, joy in our homes, God. God, I thank you for being so faithful. I thank you that we can gather here in your house to worship you and just to give you praise. So we stand and we sing before you in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Amen, church. Let's worship this morning. Your don't you turn and just high five your neighbor this morning? Tell him God is in this place. Psalm 25:25 says, "Guard my life and rescue me. Let me not be put to shame, for I take refuge in you." Let's press into him this morning, church. Our eyes focused upon him. You make a way when I cannot see. You are my strength. Though my heart is weak, you won't let go. Thank you, Lord. You take my place on this battlefield to go before. You're my sword and shield. No way. church, as we're worshiping, is those times of those mountains and those things that are coming at you. Remember the scars of the hands of our Jesus, because he has claimed our victory. The enemy has lost. He is won, and he is our victory. Amen. Amen. My life is built on your faithfulness. My hope is held in your promises. I'll take each step with your confidence, 'cause I am yours. I am yours. You never fail. You never will. I'll trust your name for greater things. You will come through. You always do. I'll trust your name for greater things. You cleared a way in the wilderness. You brought me back from the brokenness. You took my shame and you buried it. Oh, what you've done, I won't forget. You never fail. You never will. I'll trust your name for greater things. You will come through. You always do. I'll trust your name for greater things. You never fail. You never will. I'll trust your name for greater things. You will come through. You always do. I'll trust your name for greater things. I will not fear, 'cause you are with me. I'll see this fight from the victory. Thank you, Lord. No power of hell can stand against me. 'Cause I've seen this fight from the victory. I will not fear, 'cause you are with me. I'll see this fight from the victory. No power of hell can stand against me. 'Cause I'll see this fight from the victory. You never fail. You never will. I'll trust your name for greater things. You will come through. You always do. I'll trust your name for greater things. I'll trust in Here at your feet, Lord, there is no better place to be. To be swallowed up in your presence, Lord, and know that you are our victory. That all situations, God, we can bring them to your feet. We can lay them at your feet, Lord. And you are a faithful and mighty God. And you love us so very, very much. It says in Psalm 27:3, though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then I will be confident. I thank you, Lord, that we can be confident in you. Oh, walking around these walls, oh, I thought by now they'd fall. But you have never failed me yet. Waiting for change to come, full knowing this battle's won. For you have never failed me yet. You never will, my King. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You've never failed me yet. I know the night won't last. Your word will come to pass. My heart will sing your praise again. Jesus, you're still enough. Oh, keep me within your love. My heart will sing your praise again. We give you all the praises. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You've never failed. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You've never failed me yet. Thank you, Lord, for what you're doing right now in this place, for the mountains that you are tearing down. Let's begin to give him praise, church, for the mountains of your life that he is standing in front of and tearing down in front of our eyes right now as we worship him and we sing our praises to him and we lift him up in this place. I've seen you move. You move the mountains, and I believe I'll see you do it again. You made a way where there was no way, and I believe I'll see you do it again. I've seen you move. You move the mountains, and I believe I see you do it again. You made a way faithfulness, your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is our confidence. You've never failed. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness. Your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands, God. You are our confidence. You never failed me yet. Oh, you've never failed me yet. I never will forget. You've never failed me yet. I never will forget. Just stand in his presence this morning, church, for a couple seconds. Don't rush to this moment. God, I thank you for fighting for us. I thank you for loving us, and I thank you for your faithfulness. I thank you for your presence in this place. I thank you for the mountains and walls that you are tearing down right now. I thank you, Lord God, for recommitments to you. I thank you for new commitments to you, Lord, for there is none like our God. I thank you, Jesus, for the victory in your hands, in your feet, and for giving your life on the cross for each and every one of us out of love, not out of what we could give to you, Lord, but out of love for us. So, God, we just thank you in this place. We worship you in this place. And in the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. Amen, church. You may be seated.
Amen. Good morning, New Life. That song is amazing. I love that song so much. And there's kind of a cool thing. On Thursday, this week we had our kids camp, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit more. But on Thursday night, we had a worship time, and it was a 4-hour-long worship time with a bunch of kids. And at one of the points, Eric, Amy's son, came up to us and was like, "Hey, I have this song I want to play, and then I want to talk afterwards." And it was that song, and it talked about like wanting to see God move and like him do it again. And me and Mia, our prayer for this whole camp was just spiritual breakthrough that would happen in the lives of the kids. And after that song, Eric told the kids that he wanted them to pray for each other and wanted them to just get together and pray for each other in groups. And we saw spiritual breakthrough happen. We saw a bunch of little kids praying for each other, kids crying. We had one little girl said, "I'm crying, I don't know why." And for us who've been around this is like, well, you're experiencing God. That's why you're crying, right? But for this little girl, it was the first time she's ever had that experience. And it was that spiritual breakthrough that we had. And during that song, and I feel like, I don't know if they planned this, Amy. I don't know if you and Eric talked about this, but like that song right now is what God wants you guys to do. I've seen that. We've seen God move this week, and that he wants to do that again. He wants to do that today. There wants to be spiritual breakthrough in your lives today. Not just in our kids' lives at camp, but like in our lives here today. And I think it's really cool how God just works like that. So we're just excited to be here in God's presence today, church. We're just excited to see what he does and how he moves again today. So we're going to continue in this time of worship and worshiping him with our tithes and offerings. So if the gatekeepers want to come forwards. When the gatekeepers come forward, check out your bulletins. There's always great stuff going on. You don't want to miss what's going on in your life because God's doing so much. He's moving so much here, church. Do you want to be a part of that? So check that out and get involved in something. So if you want to pray with me. God, we just thank you for your goodness, God. We thank you for your presence that's here in this place, God, that we get to be with you. God, we just thank you for all the ways you're moving that we just see, and we just are expecting to see you keep moving, God, and keep moving today. We just want your presence to be here. We want to hear from you, God. I thank you for your love for us, God, and that we get to show our love to you in a whole bunch of different ways when we worship you, and that one of the ways of doing that is through this time of tithes and offerings, God. We pray you just bless the giver as they give, God. just multiply this giving and just let it expand your kingdom, God, for people who need to know you. We just love you so much, and we thank you that you're a God who's good. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. And we are going to have some of our Kids on Kids come forwards who are at camp. There's a couple of them who said they wanted to say a few things, so if you guys want to come forward. And if you want to just come forward from camp too, just because, even if you don't want to say anything, you can come over if you come up if you were from camp. And the leaders and campers, yeah, I'm getting told by Mia that the leaders and campers need to come forward too. So this is a part of our group. We had about 30, there's about 32 of us, I think, this week. Come this way, guys, in the light. You see this little square? This is my square that I stand in. You guys can stand in that square. But this is our group. This is a couple of them. We had an awesome time at camp, and I'm just going to open up the floor to them if anyone want to say anything. And the cool thing about our kids is I trust them completely with the microphone, right? How many kids can you trust with a microphone in front of a bunch of people at church? But with our kids, I trust you guys completely, so I'm going to give you the mic, okay? Who wants to start? Malia wants to start us?
So at camp we had a lot of fun. We got to learn a whole lot about Jesus, and a lot of kids who didn't know about Jesus that were there definitely learned a lot and were able to come a lot closer to God. And if any people here who are children that haven't gone to Kids Zone Camp, I definitely recommend going once you're old enough, because we had a whole lot of fun.
Something else that I really enjoyed about camp was our awesome leaders.
You guys want to say anything?
I just wanted to say that we had an awesome group of kids this year, and I think this is probably one of our best camps that we've had. Like, not only with the kids, but spiritually, I feel like God was like, I've never felt God like that. It was amazing to see how much He moved, not in only the kids' lives, but in our lives. And sometimes I think as leaders we forget that He's gonna work on us in these camps too. But so it was really cool to see how much I grew and how much all these kids grew. So I think it's really an awesome experience. So I'm just really grateful.
Yeah, you want to say anything?
Oh, in the square. Okay. I don't want to block any kids. I'll come between you guys. So just real quick, I just wanted to say that first of all, like, man, planning camp this year was kind of crazy for us because we had like so much stuff happen this summer. Like Justin and I got married, and we had like mission trip and VBS. And so, like, we were just like, oh my gosh, if anything, like, camp is like our last event. And we're like, how are we going to do this? Like, we just felt like hopeless a lot of times, like, preparing for it. And we're like, God, like, we just care so much about camp and, like, you know, the kids, and, like, we want it to be awesome for them. And a big lesson for he and I was that it's not about us and, like, our abilities to make camp happen. Like, God, like, is the one who does the work in the kids' lives, and He's the one who, like, moves. And, like, we can't, like make that happen on our own. And so it was just a really big surrender thing for us of like, okay, God, like, if this is about you, like, you're gonna make it happen, and like, you're gonna come. And so that was just really cool to see Him come and just move in mighty ways. And a big prayer for us that we had for the kids too was like, it doesn't stop now, you know? Like, this is just the beginning in your life for us and like the leaders. Like, the spiritual great breakthrough you experience is like not gonna stop in your life. It doesn't have to be one time a year. It can continue like every single day after camp. And so that was just something really cool we got to experience. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was an awesome camp, and I'm just going to wrap it up with one quick story. These kids are awesome. Like, they are so amazing. They impress me every single time we do something. They all just impress me so much. For our camp, it wasn't like it was fun. It was a fun camp with a bunch of fun stuff, but we like really were trying to make it a discipleship camp where we taught them about the Bible and about Jesus, and really like poured into them. So these kids sat through many sessions of teaching, some that lasted 2 hours of just straight teaching. Thanks, Mia, right? And my mom, Miss Shelley, she had a long one too, and I had a couple long ones. Pastor Tim had his good 20-minute one, like he always does, you know, reliable. 20 minutes, we're out of here. But these kids would go through 30 minutes of worship, and then sit through an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours of teaching lesson intently, like listening and like wanting more. And then after the end, we would have more worship, and they would just do more worship, and then we'd go into a time of one-on-one time where they would have one-on-one time with God, and we'd go into small group time. So there's like 3 hours of worship and just learning there. And it's like as us as adults can learn so much from like their faith, and I think that's what Jesus talks about when he talks about a childlike faith. It's just that desire and that like passion. These kids sang so loud, like we had people like they're like, I can't, my ears hurt. Like they sing so loud. Cora and Trinity, they sing so loud. They worship so passionately. And like, it's just something that we can take from them and be like, wow, like thank you girls, thank you boys, like thank you all for just showing us what it looks like to like worship and like be in the presence of God and like learn from him. So it was a good camp. Real quick, one more thing.
Also, I just want to give a big round of applause to our leaders, like Naya and Evie and Anna and Melissa and Eric. They did such a good job. So let's give them a round of applause real quick. They did such a good job and just were so selfless this week and just like loved on the kids even when they were tired. And also just to Tim and Shelly, people who heard their testimonies, God, I just thank you that you are moving in mighty ways. And we just believe in faith. You're going to continue to do that in our lives. You're going to continue to do more, and I just thank you for all you did in camp this week, and we just praise you for that, and we thank you for all that you've done, God. We love you, and we just pray you just bless all these kids as they continue to just follow you and as they go to school this year, and that you just protect them and guide them, and we ask this in Jesus' name, amen. All right, kids, you can go to your seats.
Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you in prayer. We ask you to please watch over the Georgia kids and the Passion kids and keep them in your loving care. We love you, God, in your son, Christ's name. Amen. Ready for the sunshine jar.
Good morning. It is good to see you. I will tell you this. A couple things. Normally, my media guy gets mad at me when I don't start out the sermon right away for streaming stuff, but we want to talk about some other stuff. One of the things that I want to talk about is I am now the old guy in children's and youth ministry. And I got to watch Justin and Mia call them the next generation, but I don't want to go there. I want to call them, they are us. They are the generation. They are the ones who are doing great things. They are part of the most powerful entity on the face of the earth. And we want to, I just want to let you know that I was impressed by our leadership from Justin and Mia and by all of them, from Eric and Anna and the Hallers and Melissa and as we go through all the different leaders that we had, they did an amazing job, and I'm just so proud of them as a pastor who got to do dishes and cook hamburgers, which is awesome. It is awesome. And they did a great job, so I'm very proud of them, and I can ask you to continue to pray for Kids Zone and Next Level, especially as we come into the school year starting where church numbers will be picking back up again, and children and we'll be seeing our children's and youth ministries kicking back in here in September. Be praying for them as we start going through that. Also, I wanted 2 quick announcements. We had Sue Hutchinson had surgery in her throat for cancer on Monday, and there was some gloom. Things weren't looking real great in her diagnosis, but she came through and is doing pretty well. And we're praising God for what was happening with her. We'll give God a hand clap for that. Tracy Sandberg had back surgery a couple weeks ago, and she is back, and she said she's doing very well for pain, and she walked in here like a boss coming in. So let's give God a hand clap for that, too. A lot of things going on around us. Just keep praying for all the congregation and different things that are going on. And if you don't know what to pray for, there's always somebody that can use your prayer for sick, for healing, for restoration, different things like that. And always pray for our kids. Amen? Amen. Now we'll start the sermon. Hey, good morning, New Life. We are here week 2 of our Frontline sermon series, and we're going to be dealing with this series for a couple more weeks, and we'll be going into our back-to-school kickoff weekend after Labor Day weekend. But we are here. We're going to be. Last week we talked about how worship is warfare, and we looked at that and the importance of that, having worship as our front line, as the worshipers went forward in our story from last week and led into battle, and God worked and battled for them. Today, we just want to remind you of what the definition of frontline is that we're using, and we're using the frontline. The definition is from the military, and it's a military line or part of an army that is the closest to the enemy, and doing a battle against the enemy. They're the closest ones, and they quote in a sentence. They said the frontline troops. And we just want to remember, as we go into this series, we want to remember one thing. We want to remember that we need to know that we are in a constant battle. Sometimes we don't think we are. Sometimes we go through life and we're like, everything's good, Pastor Tim, and things are good. And if we are battling, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to know about it. I want to ignore it, and I want to go on with life, and I want to be happy in my happy space. I don't want to think about battles, and I don't like to think about battles. And I don't like to sit here and talk about battles, but you got to understand, we're talking about frontline, but we're going to talk about battles for the next few weeks. But we are in battles. Where a lot of us go through life, and we are in constant battles, and we fight things all the time. Some of us are going through life, and we're at a great point. But I want you to know there's an ongoing battle in the spiritual realm all the time. The enemy, the devil, is always constantly prowling around looking for someone to destroy. That's what Scripture says. It tells us that the enemy doesn't let up. The enemy is throwing things at us all the time in the spiritual realm, and we need to understand that he is alive and well. But we also need to realize that God is bigger, better, stronger, and takes on anything that the enemy can throw at us, and that he is our protector. I don't say these things to scare you, but to remind you that the enemy does have a scheme. And like I said, we all know that God is bigger than the enemy, and we all know who wins. The enemy is constantly in the process of trying to steal, kill, and to destroy. That is the process that he wants to do in our marriages, in our children, in our workplaces, in our communities, and in our nation, in the world around us. That is what the enemy wants to do: kill, steal, and destroy, and to take away what God has given us. We must understand we're in a battle, church. We must understand that we have to have a strong front line as we go through our lives. That's why last week we talked about worship being so important. Why do we do worship at church? Not because we just need to fill 30 minutes. Because we could have Shelly or me or Justin come up and preach for 2 hours, and we don't need music to fill that space, right? Pastor Tim goes 20 minutes, so we need a little filler. But it's not about filling, it's about battle. When we come into the presence of God, we are battling against the enemy, and we're praising God and lifting him up, and the enemy flees during worship. So we want to remember that worship is warfare, and we come in as a front line. We lift up praise to God. It seems like we're in a time where many people have dropped their, and we see children who are leaving the faith because they're tired of battle or they don't want to battle anymore. We see adults leaving the faith because their front line is weakened. We see a lot of immorality happening in our world today, and we see now that wickedness is now common and accepted around us. Why is that? Why are we seeing things like this around us? Why are we seeing people leaving the faith and giving up on Christianity? Why do we see people in struggling in wickedness and wickedness growing? It seems like it's growing more and more accepted and common around us. It's because our society has made honoring God and living His way of little or no importance. We look around and we go, well, what do you mean by that, Pastor Tim? Well, let me give you a little understanding. Now I'm aging myself, back in my day, when I was in elementary school in a little town called Mount Morris, remember I was the dumb kid in the smart class? Anyways, I was the dumb kid in the smart class. No, I was not the smart kid in the dumb class. That would have been a better idea. Anyways, when I was in Mount Morris in elementary school, in our elementary school, there was a church across the street. And every Wednesday, our teachers would line us up at our school, and they would march us across the street into the church, where we would get there, and there would be people there who would receive us. They would give us grape Kool-Aid and stale cookies and teach us about Jesus. On Wednesdays, in a public school in Illinois, they walked us across the street for Christian education. Now, what would happen if we said, we're going to send a bunch of charter buses into the school districts around our facility here, our campus, and we're going to bus them here for an hour of Christian education, feed them real good pizza and real good something to drink? What would happen if we did that? There would be an outrage that we would think about doing such a thing. There would be people freaking out that we would try to proselytize or to tell people about Jesus in our public schools. Things have changed, church. Things have changed. And as we look at this, we see our society has taken God away, not just in our schools, but just in everyday life. We see that God has become less and less important in our society. And we're seeing more and more people have no moral or ethical absolutes in their lives. That's what's sad. There's no moral compass or ethical absolutes. We see people have no strong front line in their spiritual battle, and it's happening all around us. In church, one thing I want us to understand as New Life Bible Church, as part of the communities around this facility, I want us to understand that I want our families to have a strong front line, that we can battle the enemy and we can come out victorious, that we can walk in victory, that we can walk in knowing that God is a God that loves us, and know that God is a God that protects us and takes care of us and leads us into the right path. The thing that we're seeing is the spiritual principle of sowing and reaping is in effect, church. I believe strongly in the idea of sowing and reaping. We sow good things and we reap a harvest of good things. And if we see things around us being sowed negatively or with no absolute truth or with no Jesus, what we see is a harvest of things that are no Jesus and that are sinful and that are with no moral or ethical boundaries. So we see that principle in full force. And some of you are going, you're depressing me, Tim. Just wait, I'm going to encourage you. Hang with me. We see all these happening, so what do? Well, what we do is this. The name of the series is called Frontline, and we need to remember we need to have a strong frontline in everything we do. We talked about worship last week, and we're going to talk about God being our protector this week. We're going to focus on where our protection comes from. So what I want you to do is turn in your Bibles. And if you have it on your phone, your Bible app on your phone, open that up. We love to see people on their phones, in their Bible app, or even tweeting or texting or Facebooking, whatever you want to do during church. As long as you're here and you're texting out, make sure you say, Pastor Tim's rocking it today. Even if I'm not, do it, all right? But as we open up our Bibles and our paper Bibles too, we're going to look at Psalm 91. Psalm 91, we're going to look at the first 16 verses as we go through it today. Psalm 91, verse 1 through 16. When you got it, say got it, PT. Very good. First service struggled, man. They couldn't find Psalm 91 at all. Don't tell them that, but they did. Psalm 91, 1 through 16 says this: He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. It's also up here over my head. Very good. I will say to the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely He will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and your rampart. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. If you make the Most High your dwelling, even the Lord who is my refuge, then will no harm befall you, no disaster will come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. You will tread upon the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. Because he loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him and I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. He will call upon me and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. As we look at this psalm is a great psalm, and I encourage you, as I always do, to underline it, to highlight it, to make sure you reread it a couple times this week, because there's so much in it that I'm going to miss and that God has for you. So make sure you come back to that again and read it, because there's a lot of great stuff. But from what I'm going to talk about today is that this is a simple psalm of protection. This is a simple psalm telling us of our protection and where our shelter comes from. It tells us that God is our shelter and he is our refuge and our fortress, a place to go for comfort and for safety. As we listen about college campuses in different places today, they're promoting their safe places to go to when in time of need. I want you to understand they're years and years and years behind, because God has told us that he is our safe place, that he is our refuge, that he is a place that we're to go to, and that he is the one that will bring safety and shelter to the hurting and to those who are lost. A place to go and someone to trust. In a world that we are finding it harder and harder to find trustworthy things to believe in and to trust in, God is the one that we can come to for shelter, refuge, and for trust. He will keep us from the things that want to destroy us. Remember, we were talking about the enemy wanting to kill, steal, and destroy? That is what the enemy does. That's what he wants to do. That's what his goal in life is, to steal, kill, and destroy. But God has come as our protector, as our front line to protect us from the things that want to destroy us. It goes on and says that he will make it so we do not have to live in fear or in terror. If you think about the conversations you have on a daily basis, a lot of them start out with this: I'm afraid of, or I'm afraid that. It terrorizes me. It scares me to death. Those are the things that I hear on a daily basis. We hear people talking about. I want you to understand, as we look at this scripture, as we think about our front line, that God is our protection, and he is the one that keeps us from that living in fear, keeps us from living in that terror, keeps us from living in that time of being totally scared out of our mind. Go back to camp a little bit. I watch these kids, and I listen to them. These are little, they're all in Kids Zone now. They're little. I look at them, and I'm going, this is insane. They're so little. They're 2nd to 5th graders. In fear,